I've been covering the Big Ten for about 3 years now, and I've had the chance to attend their Big Ten Media Days, and it's always an eye opener, especially when you compare it to what goes on at the SEC Media Days. Look, the Big Ten keeps things very straightforward. They don't go out of their way to butter anybody up in the media or anything like that. That's what the SEC does, quite honestly. That's what they do at their media days, their spring meetings, all that kind of stuff. At the Big Ten Media Days, you get some basic stuff, free water, maybe short meal that lasts about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours max, no more than that. I mean, it's functional, gets the job done, but it's nothing exaggerant or extravagant by any means. They have a casual get together at a local bar one night. The time I was there, which is nice. But that's about it. Now, you flip on over to the SEC, and it's a whole different vibe. They roll out these massive spreads with tons of different food options, hot meals, snacks everywhere, and a huge selection of drinks. They give you more time to eat and mingle, and yeah, they've even been known to buy drinks for folks on their events, their media get-togethers. It's a great time to network and everything, and so they put those on to kind of help media members out. It's clear that they're catering hard to the media, almost like they're trying to win some favor, just like how I am kind of here trying to win your favor at the Big Ten Huddle, as we want to win your favor with excellent videos and insightful analysis. So, if you would, please do like and subscribe to help us and bring you more great content. Okay, back to the other stuff. At first, these differences between the Big Ten and the SEC, they did kind of perplex me and kind of irked me a little bit too, if I'm being honest. Why doesn't the Big Ten do more to cater to the media? It's obvious the media doesn't necessarily like the Big Ten, but over time, I've realized it's part of a bigger pattern than I first thought. The Big Ten doesn't pander to the media. They focus on their conference itself rather than schmoozing ESPN or, whether it's CBS. I guess they probably schmooze CBS a little bit because they're a TV partner, but you get what I'm saying. And honestly, when we talk about the SEC bias and how the media doesn't give the Big Ten the benefit of the doubt, they do for the SEC. Some of that is on them. They could probably do a bit better without feeling like it's a buy off, but it also highlights how media personalities will spend the whole season ripping the Big Ten apart and then get upset when the commissioner, Tony Petitti, doesn't sit down for them on a one-on-one interview. Wonder why that is. Wonder why when you do an entire week 4 breakdown, week 3 breakdown, you don't mention a single Big Ten game. I literally listened to a very well-known media personality at Media Days tell his crew, and I'm not paraphrasing here, I remember hearing it, saying, well, Tony doesn't want to sit down with us. We aren't going to give his conference much of a chance this season. I'm not kidding you. I heard that with my own ears, and I'm not going to tell you who it was because I'd probably lose my position at On 3 as just a standard contributor, but just know that all this just further fuels the cycle of what is going on with the media versus the Big Ten. A lot of these folks in the media think they're bigger than the sport itself. They get elevated identities of who they are and what they mean to college football. And honestly, I don't even need to drop names, but I'm sure you've got a few SEC honks that you have in mind who kind of fit that bill, right? The more I listen to these national media guys and girls too, and read their takes, it's clear the clearer it becomes, they've got an agenda. And that agenda often seems laser focused on tearing down the Big Ten. I know he's with On 3, so I might get in trouble for this, but Andy Staples, as an example. I don't think it's any secret that he is more of an SEC guy. He has said it on his show multiple times that he, has always covered the SEC more, been with the SEC more, so I don't really feel bad using his name, and if he got mad at me, then, so be it. He has said that, he's an SEC guy, and recently Andy was going against Tony Petitti on his show about the UC investment deal and all that. The $2.4 billion, yada, 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 private equity they talk about, yada, yada, yada. To me, it's over the top. It's not just disagreement, it's personal attacks on Tony Petitti's character, time, and again, and I think there's a way to cover the sport and be dissatisfied with somebody without going after them personally. And it's not isolated. It's a pattern across a lot of them. You never see that kind of treatment aimed at Greg Sankey over at the SEC. And if you do, you'd get blasted like crazy. And honestly, you might be in danger of losing your credentials at that point. So you see, The Big Ten, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just guessing there. But you see, the Big Ten has been the most hated conference in college football for as long as I've been alive and more, honestly. It wasn't always this way. Back in the 60s and 70s, the Big Ten dominated, but things shifted. The key is that the Big Ten has always been different. That doesn't mean that they've always been right. We've shot ourselves in the foot plenty of times with arrogant moves and bad decisions. And you guys know that when I think there's an arrogant move or a bad decision, like the scheduling right now, not doing an out of conference game, not forcing that, I will voice my opinion on that and go against the Big Ten. So I have brought up stuff like that multiple times on this show. But understanding the history here is crucial to seeing why the national media can't be trusted when they report on something like the Big Ten's $2.4 billion deal with UC Investments. So if we go back to 1990, when the Big Ten announced Penn State was joining, the media lost their mind. The media lost their mind. They said Penn State didn't fit the region, didn't match the conference's character of being together for so long. It was seen as the start of building a massive TV empire, breaking up old Northeastern rivalries. And honestly, you kind of seen the same coverage when Washington and Oregon and USC and UCLA came over. People wanted Penn State to stay independent or to join the Big East, but neither panned out all that well. The announcement came out of nowhere, cooked up by the university presidents and Jim Delaney, catching everyone off guard. The narrative was that the Big Ten was getting an unfair edge, especially since Penn State was at its peak power back then. Now, they haven't won a national championship since, but at the time, it fueled real resentment with the SEC, the ACC, the Big East, all these other conferences that used to exist. This hatred predates even that. After the Oklahoma Supreme Court case in the 80s, that shook up TV rights for about everybody. The Big Ten didn't join the College Football Association. They kept their media rights separate and didn't pull them into the pre-Super League setup. When the Bowl Alliance came around, they stayed out, bringing the Pac-10 along with them and keeping the Rose Bowl independent. It's kind of funny to think about the Pac-10 back then and how much the Pac-10 and the Big Ten were partners and where we're at now, but that's the way it was. People despised them for it. Then, with the BCS forming and talks of a playoff coming up, the Big Ten, along with others, but they weren't the loudest, opposed it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't think it was tradition. It wasn't for them. And I think Delaney was wrong on this one, personally. A playoff was inevitable and better for the sport. And you have some people who still downgrade the playoff. You know, the comments by Eli Drinkwitz and Pat Narduzzi have fueled a lot of that back again. But overall, I think it's better for the sport having the playoffs. But the media hammered them because it ran counter to the mainstream push. Fast forward to debates on paying players, like the lawsuit with O'Bannon and the House building bubbling up. Delaney made comments saying that if the players got paid, the Big Ten might just go D3. Yeah, I mean, they were basically Dabo Sweeney back then. It was a dumb, arrogant sounding quip, and it didn't help. And I'm not going to defend that at all. It was a terrible thing to say. I mean, the Big Ten honestly has had some terrible presidents over its time. People resented it because it highlighted the perceived elitism that the Big Ten carried for decades. Then came expansion. Going from 11 to 12 teams sparked more frenzy, like a reality TV show. You know, like you had The Bachelor, you had the Realignment, because the Big Ten's decisions kept paying off. Launching the Big Ten Network defied ESPN, and people hated it. But in all honesty, it worked, and they built a money machine everyone else envied. That's why you saw the SEC network happen, the ACC network happen. Even now, with the age-old household cable going away and Dan Wetzel wanting to call the Big Ten network obsolete, the Big Ten has started its own streaming service that works far better than ESPN streaming options. I don't know if you've been on ESPN streaming options, but they are honestly awful. They do not work. They suck. It's terrible to use. The fact that the Big Ten can do all of this without ESPN and actually do something better than them creates a lot of displeasure and resentment. But going back to realignment, adding Rutgers and Maryland created outrage everywhere. Why them? They're not football powerhouses. It's all about cable subscription. Rah, 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 rah. Vulgar, ruining the sport, they said. But guess what? It was the right call. The Big Ten kept printing money by adding those two teams. Even during COVID under Kevin Warren, they handled things terribly, only to reverse course. Honestly, it's a lot of the terrible decisions that the Big Ten has made and how they are still such a premier conference that's so amazing. Wrong move initially, sure. But again, they charted their own path and the hate poured in. Time and again, the Big Ten does its own thing. We're not always correct, by no means. I don't always agree with every choice. I'm in disagreement right now with the Big Ten. But that's what really steams people, and even with the Big Ten, is so wrong that they don't like. They can still correct it because the power of the conference and its universities, even the SEC mouthpieces like Matt Hayes have bounced around publications, now admits the Big Ten is the wealthiest conference by far. Having 18 teams and all of your teams still making more money than the SEC, who has less teams, who is supposed to be the premier conference, it's a co-equal to the SEC in influence right now. Nothing big happens without the Big Ten and the SEC's approval. This brings us to why the national media hates the Big Ten and why they can't trust their reporting on deals like the UC Investments one. You see the Big Ten not wanting to go with what the SEC wants to do right now. They want automatic bids for the playoffs. They're talking about expanding even more, but so is the SEC. It's just the Big Ten is the one that catches fire for it because the media doesn't like the Big Ten. ESPN resents us deeply because we're not beholden to their empire. If you're a fan of a Big Ten team, you might not be a Big Ten fan, but you're still treated like crap by the SEC. Or by the ESPN. So ESPN built their college football brand around the SEC without us. Remember, ABC and ESPN were basically Big Ten network for years. Saturday afternoons meant Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State games, noon slots after game day were always Big Ten. Excuse me. But we decided we weren't going to be undervalued anymore. We went our own way 20 years ago, and that is what healed, right? Compound all of these decisions over 30, 40 years, and yeah, people see the Big Ten as an elitist and arrogant conference. And in some ways they're right. There's some truth to that for sure, but it's why they're so critical of the $2.4 billion deal with UC Investments. Is this deal for sure a slam dunk? I'll be honest, I'm not completely convinced by it. I like a lot of it. There's also some stuff I don't like. I tend to think it's better than the alternatives of private equity and things like that, but time will tell. And I'll tell you who doesn't believe in it, though, who does believe in it, though, and it's 16 out of the 18 Big Ten conferences. These are top research universities. They are not idiots. They are not people who have a YouTube account. They don't need my approval. They don't need Andy Staples' approval. They don't need any, Matt Hayes' approval. These are top research universities. They're seeing value in partnering with UC Investments for a cash infusion anywhere from 100 to 190 million based on the school and how much they value him or so. USC and Michigan are holding out a bit, feeling undervalued, and there's talks about a 6-month grace period for them to be able to join, and I have another video. I'll talk more about that. But with the Michigan's interim president wrapping up soon, they'll likely come around, and they're not bolting for the SEC or going independent. At least I don't think they are. If you have a different opinion, well, I'll put that in my next video. You can check that out there. And if we're just being honest, it's been Michigan that's opposed most teams entering into the conference. So this idea that we will oppose multiple teams from coming into the Big Ten just for them to join a conference full of them seems pretty foolish to me. Now, maybe they change their opinion once they leave the conference, but I don't see Michigan doing that. All this to say, this is why the media is trashing this without asking real questions. And their recourse, if UC's projections flop, do they get made whole maybe with a premium, putting schools at risks? We're taking a 10% stake. Do they get 10% of every dollar from day one or a bigger cut up front to recoup faster like Fox did with BTN? Are schools okay with taking less short term? These are legitimate probes serious journalists should be asking right now and reporting on. But nope, they would rather just quote tweet somebody like me who's trying to clarify the deal and say, wow, this is stupid. None of them are asking the right questions. Instead, it's just smears because they hate the Big Ten and they don't think they need them. We built our own media setup everyone copied. If this deal succeeds, others will follow suit, and the media will spin it as forcing their hand, ruining the sport once again. They have the same talking points every time. But the Big Ten isn't NASCAR. It's not hockey. It's not MLB. We're too strong. We're too popular. So they trash talk nonstop, stoking hate over our elitism, our arrogance, whatever you want to call it. But this smear campaign proves one thing: the Big Ten is different, and the Big Ten is united. Although only 16 of the 18 schools agree, 16 out of 18 still seems pretty united, including powerhouses like Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. A report today said from Ross Dellinger said that Ohio State maybe wasn't fully on board, but overall still liked the deal. They see the long-term value in our 100 plus year association. Schools like Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, they all benefit. And that's what outsiders hate the most. And they'll continue to hate it, especially if the Big Ten continues to earn more than the SEC and makes the SEC do what nobody wants them to do, which is go to private equity. Comment down below your thoughts and let me know if you agree or if you see it differently. I'd love to know your thoughts. And thanks for watching the Big Ten Huddle. Have a good one.